Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. So today we are going to be tackling generative AI for ESG reporting. You know, ESG is a really hot topic right now. Everyone wants to know how it works and what it means for business. We've got this really in-depth guide. It's called Generative AI for ESG reporting. And it seems like it covers pretty much everything, from the basics all the way to like some super advanced applications of this tech. So are you ready to jump in?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Okay, great. So right off the bat, this guide, it doesn't like try to sugarcoat anything. It gets real about how tough traditional ESG reporting can be. It's like all these companies are dealing with data that's just like scattered all over the place, you know, in different systems with their own weird quirks.
Yeah, it's a total mess, like trying to do a puzzle, but all the pieces are from different puzzles. It's like, how are you supposed to even get started? And then on top of that, because so much of the data collection is still manual, it's just like riddled with errors. You can barely even compare two reports from like
Right.
even companies in the same industry. It's just a nightmare.
Yeah, that's a great point. And the guide actually uses this analogy. It's like comparing apples and oranges. When you try to look at traditional ESG reports side by side, it's just impossible to get a clear picture. And that's where generative AI, that's where it comes in.
Right. Generative AI. It's like the knight in shining armor here because it can learn from just massive amounts of data. Think of it like a student who just like devours a whole library.
Oh, wow. I like that analogy. Okay, so it's learning from all this data, but how does that actually translate to ESG reporting? The guy gives this example of a company. They're having a really hard time tracking their water usage across like all their different locations of operations.
Okay, so imagine this. Generative AI comes in. It analyzes all that historical water usage data. It compares it to, industry benchmarks and best practices. And then it can pinpoint exactly which facilities might be wasting water.
Wow, so it's like a detective.
Yeah.
But for
Yeah,
sustainability.
right.
That's so cool. But it's not just about finding the problems right. The guide also says that generative AI can actually help come up with solutions.
Right. It can recommend things like equipment upgrades, maybe changes to their operations, even ways to recycle water.
That's incredible. So it's not just about data collection. It's about actually making things better.
Exactly. And the guide goes on to explore how this can be applied across like all three pillars of ESG: environmental, social, and governance.
Okay, perfect. So let's break those down one by one. Starting with the environmental piece, tracking emissions is a huge deal these days, right?
Absolutely. Like
Yeah.
every company is under pressure to measure and reduce their carbon footprint, whether it's from like their energy use, waste disposal, transportation. It's a big deal.
Yeah, it's a huge challenge.
Sure.
And the guide highlights this case study about a manufacturing company,
Yeah.
a multinational one. They were really struggling to get a handle on their energy use across a bunch of different factories. They turned to generative AI. And the AI actually flagged one specific factory that had super high energy consumption.
That's so interesting. But what's even cooler is that the AI didn't just stop at pointing out the problem. It actually suggested solutions.
Oh, well, like what kind of solutions?
Things like equipment upgrades, maybe optimizing their production schedule, just to be more energy efficient.
That's amazing. So they're saving the environment and probably saving money too.
Exactly a win-win.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we talked about the E. What about the S in ESG, the social impact? How can generative AI help companies with that?
Well, companies are really being held accountable these days for things like diversity, equity, and inclusion. But traditionally measuring social impact, it's been tough, relying on things like surveys and self-reported data.
Yeah, it can be pretty subjective.
Exactly. But generative AI can actually analyze tons of employee data, like demographics, compensation, promotion rates. And it can help identify areas where there might be issues.
Oh, that's interesting. So, for example, it could help identify pay gaps.
Exactly. The guide talks about this tech company. They used generative AI to analyze their data, and they discovered a gender pay gap in certain departments.
Oh, wow. And then what happened?
Well, that discovery led them to take action. They reevaluated their compensation practices, and they started working to create a more equitable workplace.
That's great. It's amazing how generative AI can, bring these issues to light.
Yeah.
In a way that we might have missed before.
Totally.
Okay, so we've covered the E and the S. What about the G, governance? That's all about how companies are run right, their ethics, their transparency.
Right, that's a big one. And generative AI can play a role here too.
How so?
Well, think about this. Companies are increasingly being held accountable for the sustainability of their entire supply chain, not just their own operations.
Right, it's not just about what you do, it's
We-
about who you do business with.
Exactly. And generative AI can actually analyze public data to kind of assess how sustainable a company's suppliers are?
So like a clothing retailer could use it to make sure their suppliers are upholding ethical labor practices.
Exactly. The guide gives this example of a clothing retailer. They used generative AI to dig into data about their suppliers, and they found some red flags. One supplier had a history of questionable water use and potential labor
Oh,
violations.
wow. So they were able to catch that before it became a bigger problem.
Right, and they were able to use that information to engage with the supplier and push for improvements.
That's a great example. It shows how generative AI can help companies make sure their commitment to ESG
Yep.
goes beyond just their own walls.
Exactly. It's about the whole ecosystem.
Okay, so we've talked about how generative AI can be used to assess different aspects of ESG, but the guide also goes into how it can actually transform the reporting process itself.
Right, that's a whole other level. Let's start with data collection and analysis. We've talked about what a headache manual data collection can be, but generative AI has the potential to automate that whole thing.
Really?
Yeah, it can pull data from all these different sources,
Like internal systems, external databases?
all of it, and then it organizes it in a way that's actually usable.
That sounds like a dream come true.
It is. It's like having a personal assistant for your data.
The guide gives this example of a food processing company. They were using generative AI to track their water usage, and the AI actually caught a data discrepancy. It turned out to be a faulty sensor at one of their facilities.
Oh, wow.
They said catching that early probably saved them a ton of water and money.
That's a great example. It shows how generative AI can help ensure that the data you're using is accurate, which is like a huge challenge with traditional reporting.
Totally. And it's not just about collecting the data right. It's about analyzing it in a way that's meaningful.
Right. Generative AI can sift through huge data sets. It can spot trends, highlight potential risks or opportunities that a company might have completely missed.
So it's like having a superpowered data analyst.
Exactly.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
But wait, there's more, right? The guide suggests that generative AI can even help write the reports themselves.
Now that's where things get really interesting. It can take all that data, summarize it, highlight the key trends, even create visuals like charts and graphs.
So instead of like a team spending weeks putting together a dense, hard-to-read report, generative AI can just generate a draft in like no time.
Exactly. And because it's using consistent language and formatting, these reports are way easier for stakeholders to understand and to compare across different companies.
That's a game changer.
It really is.
It sounds like generative AI has the potential to make ESG reporting more efficient, more accurate, and ultimately more impactful.
I completely agree.
But as we become more reliant on this technology, it raises a really important question. How do we ensure that it's used responsibly?
That's a great question, and it's one that we need to think about carefully.
Totally. This has been a fascinating conversation so far, but I think we need to take a deeper dive into that question of responsibility
Mm.
and explore the ethical considerations of using generative AI for ESG reporting.
Sounds good to me. So before we took a little pause, we were talking about how generative AI could really revolutionize ESG reporting, automating data collection, you know, offering these incredible insights, even helping to write the reports themselves. It's amazing what this technology can do.
It really makes you wonder, like if you can analyze mountains of data
Yeah.
and find all these like actionable insights, is it almost like thinking for itself?
Well, maybe not thinking exactly, but the guide does emphasize that even though generative AI has all these amazing capabilities, we can't forget about human oversight. They call it a human-in-the-loop approach.
So it's not about replacing human judgment. It's more like using AI as a tool to enhance it.
Exactly. Think of it like this. Generative AI is like your brilliant assistant, not the CEO.
Okay, I like that.
It can do a lot of the heavy lifting with the data, but it's still humans who need to provide context and consider the implications of the insights and ultimately make the decisions.
That makes sense. So it's about using this technology responsibly, not just blindly trusting everything it says.
Exactly. And that brings us to another really important point that the guide highlights the need for explainability.
Explainability.
Yeah, companies need to be able to explain how their AI models are working.
Right, because if we don't understand
Yeah.
how the AI is coming to its conclusions, how can we trust its recommendations?
Exactly. It's about transparency, making sure that the AI's decision-making process is clear so we can verify that it's fair and that it's aligned with our values.
So it's like being able to look under the hood of the AI
Yeah.
and see how the gears are turning.
Yeah, I like that analogy. Explainability is key to building trust. especially when we're talking about something as important as ESG.
Okay, so it's not just about having AI on our side. It's about making sure it's playing by the rules.
Exactly, and that takes careful planning, thoughtful implementation, and ongoing monitoring to make sure it's being used ethically.
Right.
But the guide goes beyond just, the nuts and bolts of how generative AI works. It also explores some really cool potential applications that go beyond what we've talked about so far.
Oh, really? Like what?
Well, one area they explore is risk analysis, using generative AI to analyze ESG-related risks, like, for example, climate change.
Okay, how would that work?
Well, the AI could analyze climate data,
Yeah.
economic trends, government policies, all sorts of things, to understand how climate change might impact a company.
So it could help companies predict things like disruptions to their supply chain from extreme weather.
Exactly, or shortages of key resources. It's about anticipating those risks.
That's huge. It's like moving from a reactive approach to a proactive one.
Exactly, and generative AI can also help companies stay ahead of the curve when it comes to ESG regulations.
Oh, right, because those are constantly changing.
Yeah.
New laws, new reporting requirements.
It's a lot to keep up with.
Okay.
But generative AI can analyze those regulatory trends, identify potential changes, even help predict how those changes might impact a company.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So companies can start preparing in advance instead of scrambling at the last minute.
Exactly. It's all about using AI
Yeah.
to gain a deeper understanding of this complex landscape.
Okay, so it sounds like generative AI has a lot of potential to make ESG reporting more forward-thinking and strategic.
I completely agree. But of course, with any powerful technology, there are potential downsides if it's not used responsibly.
That makes sense. What are some of the things companies need to be careful about?
Well, data privacy is a big one. ESG reporting often involves dealing with really sensitive information about a company's operations, their employees, their suppliers, even their customers in some cases.
The companies need to be really careful.
To protect that data as AI becomes more involved in the process.
Absolutely. They need to make sure that these AI systems are secure, that they're only accessing the data they're supposed to.
Right, and then there's the risk of over-reliance on AI. We can't just assume that we can hand over all our ESG responsibilities to AI and call it a day.
Right. It's tempting to think that technology can solve all our problems, but we still need human intelligence and oversight.
Absolutely, we need to be skeptical. We need to evaluate the AI's recommendations and be ready to step in if something doesn't seem right.
So it's about finding that balance
Yeah.
between the power of AI and human accountability.
Exactly.
So looking ahead, what does the future hold for generative AI and ESG?
Well, the guide points to some really interesting possibilities. One trend is the use of AI to create more dynamic and interactive ESG reports.
Instead of those boring old PDFs.
Exactly. Imagine reports that are customizable, updated in real time, maybe even interactive.
That would be amazing.
It would make ESG reporting much more engaging and accessible.
I love that. What else does the guide suggest?
Well, they talk about the potential for AI-powered platforms
Yeah.
that could actually help companies collaborate on ESG issues.
It's like a social network for ESG.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
A place where companies can share data, benchmark their progress, work together on solutions.
That's a cool idea.
It aligns with this idea that we need a more collaborative approach to sustainability.
Right. We're all in this together.
Exactly.
It's exciting to think about what we could achieve.
It really is. It makes me optimistic about the future of ESG and the role that AI can play.
This has been a great conversation, but I think we need to circle back to something we touched on earlier, the ethical implications of using AI in this space.
Yeah, that's a crucial
We
conversation.
need to make sure that this technology is used responsibly and ethically.
Oh, absolutely.
So we're back, and we've been talking about all these amazing things that generative AI can do for ESG reporting, but now it's time to get real about the ethical side of things.
Right. It's not all sunshine and roses. There are some serious challenges we need to consider.
Exactly, and the guide really dives into this. They emphasize that we need to be super careful about how we design and train and use generative AI in this context.
Yeah, it's not just about the technology itself. It's about using it responsibly and ethically.
And one of the biggest risks the guide highlights is bias. Like if the data used to train the AI is biased.
Oh, yeah, that's a huge concern. If the data is not representative, the AI could end up perpetuating existing inequalities or coming to some pretty unfair and inaccurate conclusions.
So it's like garbage in, garbage out. Companies need to make sure they're using diverse data sets when they're training these AI models.
And it's not just a one-time thing. They need to monitor for bias throughout the entire process.
Right, it's an ongoing thing. The guide also talks a lot about transparency. Companies can't just treat generative AI as a black box.
Right. They need to be able to explain how it's working, what data it's using, how it's making decisions.
It's about building trust with stakeholders.
Exactly. Imagine an investor or an employee trying to understand an ESG report that's heavily reliant on AI. If they don't know how the AI is working, they're not going to trust the information.
Right. It's like, show your work, don't just give me the answer.
Exactly. And that ties into accountability, too. If the AI makes a mistake, companies need to be able to figure out why and take responsibility for it.
So it sounds like we need some clear guidelines and procedures for using generative AI in this space.
I think so, just like we have for other critical business processes.
So it's not just about the tech itself, it's about creating a whole framework for using it responsibly. But even with all these ethical challenges, the guide is pretty optimistic about the future. They think generative AI could actually help companies go beyond just reporting and actually improve their ESG performance.
Yeah, I mean, that's the dream, right? Using AI to make the world a better place.
Imagine AI helping companies reduce their environmental impact or create more inclusive workplaces.
The possibilities are pretty incredible.
And the guide mentions some really cool ideas, like personalized ESG reports.
Oh, yeah, that's a great one. Imagine AI tailoring reports for different stakeholders.
So an investor could get a report focused on climate change, and an employee could get one focused on diversity and inclusion,
It's about giving people the information they care about most.
and making those reports way more engaging.
Absolutely.
The guide also talks about AI-powered platforms that could help companies collaborate on ESG.
Yeah, like a shared space where companies can share data, benchmark their progress, and work together on solutions.
That's a really cool idea.
It could really accelerate progress on sustainability.
It feels like we're on the verge of something big.
I think so too.
Generative AI has the potential to transform ESG.
But we need to make sure we're doing it the right way.
We need to prioritize responsible innovation,
Absolutely.
fairness, transparency, accountability.
Those are the key ingredients.
This has been a fascinating deep dive, and I think we've covered a lot of ground, from the technical details of generative AI to the ethical considerations and the future possibilities.
Yeah, it's been a great conversation.
We hope you've enjoyed it and that you'll continue to explore this exciting space.
Thanks for joining us.
We'll see you next time.